The content of Chronic Convos is for informational purposes only. If you have medical concerns or emergencies, please seek professional help immediately. Thanks for listening.
With Emmanuel, who you met last week, who is our founder
What's
of
up?
WAAA. And we're also joined by Nicole Diaz, who is our Director of Education for WAAA. And I'll let her talk a little bit more about herself in just a minute. As I mentioned with Emmanuel and I, it's like a big family, and Nicole and I haven't known each other that long, but we were like long lost sisters the second we like started talking and met. And again, we're on completely different coasts, but we just kind of related, both having a chronic illness journey ourselves and very similar sense of humor and experiences. So you'll get to see that kind of sprinkled throughout this episode of our podcast. And we've got some really interesting stuff to listen to discuss today. So yeah. So I guess Nicole, if you want to just kind of dive into your story, and again, how you got involved with WAAA and why being the director of education is super important to you, and then kind of explain your chronic illness journey.
All right. So I guess I can start with a little backwards. I'm going to start with the chronic illness because it kind of ties into everything. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia about 7 years ago and lupus 2 years ago now. Although I started having chronic joint pain and the pains from fibromyalgia and sun sensitivity from lupus when I was just a kid, like 10 years old. It started with like pain in my joints in my knee, and they were like, oh, it's jumper's knee. Then it was my wrist, and they were like, maybe there's a stress fracture we don't see. But now, like, I know that it's the same pain that I feel every day now. So the whole journey there it sucked. I mean, at first it was just like a little bit of joints. I was like a really big athlete. So I think that helped me for a long time not have like too much of a problem because I was running 3 miles a day. I was exercising. I had a lot of strength that was supporting my joints. And then when I got to the point where I couldn't exercise like that anymore, it kind of blew up in my face a little bit. I also made a lot of poor choices that triggered my first big lupus flare. So I was like smoking hookah, which if you have an autoimmune disease, you know that nicotine is not our friend. And hookah is really strong. A lot.
Extremely strong. Oh,
nicotine. Yeah. And I broke out in hives from head to toe.
Oh, no.
For over 3 months.
Oh, my gosh.
Hold on. From smoking hookah one time, which is like, first off, smoking hookah is like amazing, first off, but it was.
Oh no!
Okay, so you smoked it like.
I was gonna
okay,
say,
so how long did it take? How much hookah was this?
Like in high school, I had like dabbled a little bit, but then I didn't at all. And then when we were living in Penn State, when my husband was in law school, I would say it was like couple months of it. At first I thought maybe I was allergic to the red dye or something like that. They were like, it has to be allergies. But when I stopped smoking, it did not go away. And so 3 months straight of hives. Like they tried to tell me it was allergies. God. They sent me to a freaking immunologist or whatever. Like allergist, no, immunologist. That's the person.
They could be one in the same.
Allergist. Yeah. They sent me to an allergist, had like a huge panel. And if you know a lot about like the medical fields and stuff like that, people like us that have researched so much, hives don't continue past
for 3 months.
Yeah. Reactions do not persist. So 3 months and you're still telling me I'm having an allergic reaction was absurd. And I also had a low-grade fever for that entire 3 months. And
did you have the butterfly rash on your face?
That was what I didn't have. I actually
interesting.
That one just kind of came in. But fun fact, only 30% of people with lupus actually get a malar rash.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, only 30% of people with lupus. So when I was in actual doctor's offices, they would say that shit to me. They would be like, oh, you don't look like you have lupus. And I'd be like, I get that a lot. And like being young, like I was, and looking like I'm in shape and not looking sick was, I think, part of the reason why it was so frustrating. I had doctors every single time would be like, oh, are you exercising? Are you eating healthy? And I'm like, do you exercise when you have the flu?
Seriously.
I've had a fever for 3 months. If I try and work out, I'll pass out. So it was rough. I went to like so many different doctors. Every single time I would go in there, they would assume that I had lupus and then do my blood work. And then my blood work would come back like inconclusive.
Of course. I've been down that road before too.
Yeah. Yep. I had a high ANA, and at first like my complements were high, but only a little bit. My C-reactive protein was a little bit high, but nothing else was like really just showing up. Right. And so they'd be like, oh, fibromyalgia. Oh, it must just be the fibromyalgia. And I was like, well, let me show you the symptoms of fibromyalgia and my symptoms and which ones line up and which ones don't. So explain these to me then.
And there's also not a blood test for fibromyalgia, as we know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
which you could do the trigger point test. I do have fibromyalgia. It's true. Right. But like it just doesn't encapsulate everything that was going wrong.
Same. And yeah.
So I knew, like, based off of like what was going on in my body, like that didn't feel right. It just didn't feel like that was it. And what's so frustrating is that it took them 6 years to finally put me on lupus meds. And the hydroxychloroquine that I'm on now, it's not only to help with symptoms, it slows progression. So that's 6 years of disease progression that could have been prevented if I was medicated sooner.
And so what would that have, because 6 years is a very long time when it comes to a disease progressing in your body, growing, getting stronger. And so what would the difference have been, do you think, if they'd kind of caught that sooner?
I don't know, truly, and I never will. And thankfully, a lot of my symptoms are not, are more musculoskeletal.
Yeah.
Musculoskeletal are mostly musculoskeletal and like skin kind of. I have a lot of like psychological ones too, but it's mostly joint pain, muscle pain, my tendons and like my connective tissue is pretty screwed up too, but I haven't had any serious issues with like my organs like a lot of people with lupus do.
Right.
I haven't had any issues with my liver or my kidney. Only like the tiniest bit with my heart so far. So I'm not sure if it would have stopped like the joint issues because I also have the fibromyalgia, but you know, I feel like it's not worth whatever tiny bit that it could have changed, you know?
Yeah. And I'm in a similar boat as you. I mean, I haven't told our listeners quite yet my entire journey, but it took me a very long time to get diagnosed properly as well. And because of it, to date, you know, I've had 25 surgeries, all mostly joint-related surgeries in the last 4 years. And if I would have been told, because, you know, I used to be overweight and everything was always blamed on my weight. And I would, you know, but like you, growing up, I knew, like looking back now, I'm like, oh, this is why I had no energy to shower. This is why I went back to bed and was always late to class. This is why I was always in the nurse's office. This is why I didn't feel well. And like I had no energy and it hurt to walk, but everyone blamed it on my weight. And to other people's defense, I could see how that could play a role in it because yes, as soon as I lost weight, a lot of things felt better. to an extent, and then everything popped up, and everything I had been feeling before I lost weight had returned. So, and like you know, I'm on medications that are supposed to slow the progression, and yet I feel I went so long without getting diagnosed and being properly medicated that it did a lot of damage to my joints. And so I have no idea when my next surgery is, but I'm like, oh, okay, is that a regular pain I'm feeling today? Or nope, that feels worse today. Like, that's kind of on a daily basis. And not that I want to think that way. It's just my body's like, hi, remember me? We're here to, you know, create havoc in your life. You know,
how's it going?
Right. Even if you want to continue, you know, going on and pretending everything's fine, we're here to remind you that that's not the case. So
yeah, that happens. And then it's like the on the good days, because of how long you were gaslit about your own disease, it's like, oh, maybe it's all in my head. And I'm like, you have severe arthritis in your spine and have to possibly get 2 discs replaced. It's not in your head, very clearly.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I have a good day, like today is like the first good day, the healthiest that I've felt in like 2 years.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Did the elliptical today for 15 minutes.
Yay!
And yesterday for 15 minutes. And that's like the first time that has happened in like 2 years. So it's like, on days like today, it's like I convinced myself that maybe it was all in my head. But I also know logically that's not the way it is. But I also think about how hard it is, because I don't know if this is just my experience because I'm also autistic, but I didn't know that the things that I was feeling weren't normal. So like a lot of my pain, I just thought everyone felt like that. And I was just like a wimp. I was like, God, everybody feels like this, like whatever, until I read something that was like, and this was literally like a couple years ago, that was like, what it's like to be chronically ill. And it was somebody just asking somebody, where do they feel pain in their body right now? And I tried it. I was in my tattoo studio and somebody was asking me about my experience, and I looked at her and I said, where do you feel pain in your body right now? And she said, nowhere. And I was like, I have never experienced that in my life. Like, even though today is the best pain day that I have had in so long, I still have burning sensations radiating down my shoulders. I still have the dull throbbing from the tension in my neck, in my head. I still have my wrists like throbbing, my joints, my ankles are still throbbing. Like it's a great day for me, but like I don't know what it's like to not have pain.
Right. And isn't that interesting? And it's funny. This is why you and I are long lost sisters, because like before we started filming, I'm like, you know, I wonder like the psychology behind it, because like you, I thought, oh, everyone feels this way. Oh, it's just a tension headache, or oh, you're dehydrated, or like, because these are things that I was always told, or oh, it's because you're overweight. That's why your back hurts, you know. Yeah. But like when I got into a car accident in 2012 and got rear-ended and got really severe whiplash, that back pain never went away. And I know for a fact that's not because I was overweight. And like I was trying to figure that out this entire time with all my doctors, and they're like, no, you just need to lose weight. And it's like, but that throbbing pain has never gone away. And now it turns out I have 3 herniated discs in my lumbar spine. I have ankylosing spondylitis. You know, I'm, for our viewers, you guys know this, but I'm currently recovering from a nerve ablation I just got in my neck on Tuesday, because I have 3 herniated discs there that are pressing on nerves, causing these really bad migraines that I've had since 4th grade, but no one was really able to pinpoint. But yeah, I can't remember a time where nothing hurt. And it's crazy how in the autoimmune or chronic illness community that we have to like, oh, well, today I'm at a level like 5, and that's functional. I can sometimes function at a level 7 on a pain scale of 1 to 10. And
I don't experience on a 7 all the time.
Yeah,
and the past 2 years I was at, that was my average. That was my norm, was a 7. I was like, 5 is a pretty good day. The best I've ever got is a 3. Like 3-4, like that's the best day I've ever had in my life. Like,
right. And people who don't experience pain just don't
get it.
understand it. And again, they look at you physically and they're like, oh, well, you're fine. Like, what do you mean? And it's like, you have no idea what my insides feel like right now. And like, I love seeing those. What was that?
Pretty privilege has some ups. It does. It has some ups, but not in the chronic illness world. Pretty privilege.
Right.
I specifically, before I go to doctor's appointments, I actually did a TikTok on this. I was like, get ready with me to go to the doctor. And I had to come home from work. I had like an interview, so I had to like get changed into something bummy because I can't wear like work clothes. I can't look like professional because they won't take me seriously. I had to wear shorts so that they could see the rashes and the bruises on my legs. I had to take off all my makeup. If I walked into the doctor's office with this makeup on my face, there's not a chance in hell that anybody would take me seriously. And then I had to put like my hair on top of my head so it doesn't look like I took care of myself. And then that is the only reason. So I did all of that for the first time. That is the only reason that I have hydroxychloroquine. My doctor accidentally opened my blood work from a year prior that he had never looked at and saw the lupus marker and put me on hydroxychloroquine because I showed up looking like that.
So he didn't even check it the whole time?
A year.
Wow.
He opened the wrong blood work because we had just done other blood work. And he opened the one that he had done a year ago, and it was the wrong one. And that was the one that had the lupus marker. And he was like, well, this with, like, how high your ANA is, like, we should probably. And I'm like, that's not even the right blood work. Like,
how do you know he didn't open it for a year?
I mean, he could have. He didn't do anything about it. He could have opened it. He didn't care when I came in looking like a normal person. He cared that day.
Wow.
And like,
have you taken legal action or?
No.
Yeah.
I'm not.
I was going to ask the same thing. Like, did you sue the man?
Effort, right? Like, that takes a lot of energy and effort. And
true.
I don't think it's a fight that I would even win with the way that the world currently is. They would look at my blood work and be like, oh, well, the doctor could have said no. Like, they could have just decided they didn't think that was the best choice. But if you actually go online, they have the diagnostic criteria for systemic lupus. And it's, like, broken down. It's, like, it's pretty easy. Okay, if you have, like, the ANA qualified, like, the specific ANA, then you can move on to the next thing. There's, like, a list of a certain number of things. If you have 10 points or more, then you should be diagnosed with SLE. Well, I have 19, with or without any blood work components. So no matter what, any doctor should be diagnosing me. And yet I went to like 7 and not a single one did. Until that, yeah. That shit's frustrating.
That's crazy. And go ahead. You're going to say something?
I was going to move on to the next question. The WAAA. And that's because this all kind of came to a head in February, where I said, like, I've had
of this year
the worst pain. Yeah, of this year, February of this year, the very beginning of February. And I was finally like, I had been looking for like remote work for a while. I was even considering just like quitting cold turkey and not just like trying to live on one income for a while. Like, I just couldn't do it anymore because I was in so much pain. I was having migraines every single day, going into work, working with children. I was doing the job of 5 full-time jobs in working in education because we don't treat our teachers right. And then
that's another conversation for another episode, right?
So I ended up having to leave my job like cold turkey, and it's been like a huge struggle because I can get, in the state of Florida, if you leave for health reasons, you can get unemployment. But I'm sorry, $550 a month doesn't even cover my doctor's expenses. When I was the worst of it, when I was going to PT and acupuncture and getting medical massages to try and decrease pain levels, like that was $600 every couple of weeks. So like your $550 doesn't do shit for me. And my disability claim that I submitted at the end of February is still only 8% reviewed.
Of
And I'm
course.
sure it'll take more than a year, and they're going to deny me because I'm 29. So that's why when I was looking for new jobs and I saw this, it's funny because it was posted for your fundraising goals, like your fundraising roles. And I was talking to Will, and once I looked up you guys and I saw and I heard everything that you were doing, I was like, I want to be much more involved in this than just fundraising. Like, I want to be a part of this. This is really important to me because what you're doing relates to me. I mean, if I had somebody, especially down the line when we're talking about the legal representation, like in my old job, I asked to work from home 1 day a week and I was denied. 1 day a week. My whole job, if I'm just doing the job like that I was actually hired to do, can be fully remote. It is not necessary for me to be inside that school, maybe every once in a while. But they had me doing other jobs that wasn't what I was hired for. And so they didn't even approve that 1 day a week. Like, if we have legal representation for people, like, they deserve that.
Oh yeah.
And because we still can be functioning human beings. I mean, you look at the three of us, you're not going to know that we're sick. And like right now, my back is throbbing, my neck hurts from my ablation, my left side is numb due to the ablation. Like, you're not going to know any of this. You're having a really good day, Nicole, but like you mentioned, like other joints are hurting you right now, you know. And then Emmanuel, I don't know what you're experiencing right now, if any symptoms. But like you're gonna look at the three of us and be like, oh, well, they're contributing members to society. They're functioning. You
They're
know,
perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah, they can go work. Like, why are they wasting their time doing this podcast? You know.
Yeah.
But like,
it's all in our head. Remember, like
the way that I wake up,
we're just imagining this shit.
Yeah, the way I wake up on a daily basis, and some people might argue that this is negative, but it's just this is the best I have. I wake up and I'm like, okay, what hurts? And what level pain is it? And can I function today? Am I able to get out of bed today? That's literally what goes through my head. And I wiggle all my extremities to make sure everything's moving. And of course, I'm thankful that I was able to wake up and I'm breathing. But I kind of just go from there. And maybe that's a negative way to do things, but that's literally, I mean, I had to get up 3 hours before this because it's with ankylosing spondylitis especially. It's very hard in the morning. Like, you were the stiffest because you've been sleeping this whole time. You've been in one position. Although me, if you look at my bed, it looks like I've been fighting ninjas all night because I've got pillows and everything everywhere. Because I toss and turn so much.
I do too.
But because you've been in one position, you're the stiffest. And so you wake up and it takes me a while to get the wheels going, you know, and then to look like this, it takes a while. I have to take breaks in between. And everyone's like, well, why do you put makeup on? And my husband especially is always asking that. And I'll tell him, I'm like, honestly, it's to hide what's going on internally. I've always been into makeup and always been into hair and nails and everything like that because on my dad's side, they're all cosmetologists, but it's to hide what's going on inside. I want to look presentable and I want to look better than how I'm currently feeling. Even if it takes me 5 hours to look like this, to me, it's like worth it. Like, not that I'm trying to keep up appearances or anything, but you guys can probably relate to that in some regard.
I've been doing that since I was a kid. I mean, I remember I felt really sick and I had to go to school still. So I was like, I'm going to look good as hell today because if I look good, feel good. I didn't feel good, but but I looked good.
Right.
That is like masking. I don't know if you guys are big maskers because, again, the ADHD and the autism. When I go somewhere, the mask that I wear isn't just like the way that I present myself, like personality or how I interact with people. That mask is down to the way that I do my makeup, down to the outfit that I wear, the shoes that I wear. Like, I have to make sure that I am presenting in exactly the way that I want to be acting in that space so that
Yep.
I know that I'm in that character. So
Yep.
that, like, because at home I'm not. I'm in my comfy clothes and cuddling with my dog with my 2 heating pads on, and
I have heating pads on right now. Yep.
yeah.
And I mean, you guys have seen me on Zoom meetings for organization. I look drastically different than I do right now. But also, I know you guys can relate, and maybe I've scared a few members of our organization with the way I look without makeup on and my hair, and kind of looking like I literally rolled out of bed. But no, I'm the exact same way. The thing that I hate the most, I was basically born in heels. I can't wear heels anymore with my knee replacement, and my other knee probably not going to last much longer before it needs to be replaced. So I've had to just find really fun shoes, but that are comfortable. And,
I've been on because, like, especially working, like, every day, I used to wear heels to work, and I was like, I can't do this.
Right.
And so I have Adidas. I'm an Adidas girly. I'm in these ones.
Hey.
I have them in black and white and tan. I will get them in everything, and I'm a sneaker kicks kind of girl now.
Yeah. No, like, I love Skechers, and they have a flat line too now, flats line. So,
nice.
yeah, and then Tom's does too. And they have the Ortho Light Memory Foam, which makes it so comfortable for me. So, hey, Tom, Skechers, or Adidas, if you guys are listening, holler. Just kidding.
This is a shoe podcast now.
Right?
We talk about shoes now. That's what we do.
Right? Well, hey, they can be your sponsors. But no, like,
it's relatable content.
It is, and when you're comfortable, I mean, it literally makes our lives, and I can still look presentable at an event or whatever, but be comfortable. And when all of this started years ago, there weren't too many brands like that. Even Anne Klein is really good. They make a sports flats line where I can wear like fancy flats, but they're very comfortable. And so, and Nine West too. I love shoes. If you looked at my shoe collection, you'd be like, when are you wearing all these? But like going back. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna go back on track again.
I was as well.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was gonna bring it back in too.
I was about to start talking about shoes too for a second.
Okay,
Shit.
what do you wear, Emmanuel? No,
I have nothing important to say. Let's go.
No, Emmanuel.
I guess it's like my whole closet's just full of like, I keep buying like white shoes, getting them dirty, and then I just buy new white shoes instead of cleaning them. I don't know. That's it.
No, that's my life.
I'm like that. I just keep buying it. I need to learn how to clean shoes. So I can
have a ton of Converse.
I have so many good shoes I need to start wearing again.
Yeah, I have a ton of Converse because they have the Ortho Light Memory Foam in them too now. And and you can wear different colors and stuff. But what brand do you wear, Emmanuel?
Me, I wear like, what am I wearing right now? Hold on.
I don't know.
We're a shoe podcast again. Oh, I got Levi's. They look really like official. So I can wear this with a suit pretty easily.
Those are
nice. Like, I like that. I wear pretty much any outfit, casual, suit, anything.
Are they comfortable?
That's pretty cool. Oh, they feel amazing. Okay. It literally feels like clouds on my feet.
Love it.
Like it feels like just like, oh, what was that? Like in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Y'all remember that? Like where he literally just put clouds on his feet. Like, oh my God. It's amazing, actually. I think they have these inserts that just come with the shoe or something.
Right. A lot of brands I've noticed are doing that. And like Converse, oh my God, it's like walking on like whipped cream or clouds or something. They're so comfortable. Same with Tom's and Converse are like my go-tos, and then Skechers. And then for fancy events it's Anne Klein or Nine West. But
but these are my newest white shoes.
Okay.
So I'm gonna miss them when they get dirty.
I'm
really gonna miss these ones. Oh yeah.
Well, you're in Pennsylvania right now. Just stick them outside, right? Isn't it raining there? Can clean them off or something.
Now it's good. Finally.
Oh, okay, good.
It was a hurricane last night. It was nuts. It shook my house. It shook the whole house. The lightning just literally it was like Zeus was just really pissed off that day. I don't know why. His rain was everywhere. Oh my God.
Zeus
Oh
was
my
But yeah,
God.
that's
Well,
it.
I'm glad you're okay and didn't float away. What I was going to say about keeping up appearances is kind of tying into our episode last week, Emmanuel, like when you had all of your like blisters and sores and how you still had to go to work and like you had to keep up an appearance, right? Did you have to go in a suit and tie even though you felt like shit? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Who?
Emmanuel.
Me?
Yes.
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
When you were going through your diagnosis for AIDS but didn't know
Oh,
it yet.
sorry. I thought you said a few weeks ago. Okay, I was like, no,
No, our
not me.
episode
Oh, I think
last
way
week.
back. Okay,
I
sorry,
was like,
sorry. I thought
what
you were
just
talking to
happened?
Nicole. Nicole is our guest. You're
I
supposed to talk to the
understand,
guest.
but
I'm not the center of attention. I
you're
just talk
not.
about
We're
shoes and then go
Emmanuel.
back to my corner.
Hey, I'm the host here. This is what we're all relating. So please, didn't you have to like still go in a suit and tie even though half of your face was swollen when you were
Oh, of
working?
course, yeah.
Yeah.
But see, I tried to mask it. Like, well, I literally masked it. I just wore a mask, to try to hide the
Oh,
blisters on
true,
my.
because it was during
Because I had the
COVID.
big. Okay, in case anyone didn't hear the last episode, I was diagnosed with AIDS in 2022. It was like I didn't catch it till it was like very late stage. I'm very happy I survived, but I had massive blisters all over my mouth, very visible. And it got weird to the point where I'd have these like cracks on the side of like my mouth, like these black cracks that like had blood coming out. It was disgusting. So anyway, I
Sounds
wore a
so
mask.
painful.
Yeah,
I
honestly,
always wore a mask. I was like, no, I just don't. I don't want everyone seeing that.
with lupus,
And the
I
big
get
thing
them
for me,
inside.
oh yeah,
With
and the big
lupus,
thing for me was
sorry.
the itching because
Oh,
I had severe. I'm
Okay.
not sure. No, it was before I started medication, so it wasn't a side effect.
yeah.
But like, yeah, like the itching all over my legs and arms was the worst part. It would just keep going, like all day, every day, like
And you're
severe,
like,
like not, like probably like not like maybe like 8 out of 10 itching,
yeah,
but like all day, like it
Yeah.
was nuts. And I could
I feel
scratch
that.
it, it would just not go away. It was like inside of me. Almost, it
Yeah.
got to the point where you literally want to just like scratch your own skin off to get under it. Like it's
I
that
had
bad. Like you think, well, maybe if I
zero
cut the leg off or
whatsoever.
something will happen.
too. I got to the point when I had the hives for 3 months, and this is the dumbest thing that I have ever done, I think. Actually, no, that's not true, but it's
Oh
You
God.
tell.
up there. I was like trying to look up things that got rid of like feelings of being itchy. I bathed in cayenne pepper. Tell
What?
me why
That
that's
make-
a really bad idea? It's a
It
really
would burn,
bad
I
idea
guess.
because it gets in everywhere else, and that does not feel good. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done.
I just don't understand
No.
how cayenne pepper would calm down
I
hives.
don't know. The internet told me, and I was desperate.
I understand
You can
though
always
because
trust the internet.
when I had,
itching.
because I have psoriasis and eczema, and it was
Yeah.
really, really bad when I was a teenager. That's when it first came on, and I'd get these creams and everything. And I remember one of my first jobs, I was working at Ralph's Supermarket. I think you guys call it Kroger out there, on the East Coast, yeah. And I remember, even though I tried to cover it up with makeup because it would just be like really inflamed around my nose. And I would have people say, like, are you okay? Like looking at me like I was some diseased person and be like, I think you need to get that checked out. And I'm like, thank you, as if I didn't feel shitty about myself already.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But the pain and the stinging and the itching for psoriasis and rosacea and eczema, not so much rosacea, eczema and psoriasis are horrible. My scalp used to be so inflamed where it would bleed behind my ears, everywhere, on the insides of my arms. It hurt so badly. Now I still get it around my nose and my fingers, like in between my fingers, which that hurts. Even when you wash it with soap and water, it doesn't feel great. But it'll crack and bleed. And even if I put all my stuff on, it just depends on the environmental factors of the weather and if I'm stressed and or if I feel like shit. Like those are all like big contributing factors. So I can relate to what you guys have both experienced too. And it's not fun.
Yeah.
Whatsoever.
I have good news.
What?
I have good news.
What?
It's all in your head. Just stop.
Oh.
Just stop doing it. It's done.
Fuck off.
Just stop. Just stop thinking about it. Boom. Problem solved.
Read the room.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting back to our third question. Your third question for me was...
I'm glad you remember, because I don't.
Oh my gosh. Like, we haven't even gotten to the news yet. Okay, here we go.
WAAA, why I'm super excited about education. Well, that is because I am an educator. I worked in education for the past 5 years. I have a master's in teaching. I love my kiddos. And I also understand that, like, I even worked with some kids that had illnesses that nobody else talked about, nobody else understood, and they were bullied and all of that. And then I also have the experience of me having joint pain at 10 years old and nobody even considering it an option. We're not taught about autoimmune diseases. We're not taught about anything that's like out of the ordinary unless we can control it. Right? So like currently in the curriculum and the standards, at least for Maryland is what I looked up, but their standards start teaching about chronic diseases in middle school, but they only cover cardiovascular disease. They only cover diabetes, and they only cover cancer, like lung cancer, don't smoke, like cardiovascular disease, don't eat fast food, diabetes, don't eat too much sugar, and don't drink soda. That's what they cover. And it's like, first off, yes, teach those things, but let's not teach them in a way that it's like, let's shame people that do have diabetes, because there's more than one type of diabetes. And let's teach kids about the things that they can't control. There's so many genetic diseases and chronic illnesses like lupus, like AS, like so many other ones. I had a cousin that was diagnosed with Crohn's when he was in elementary school. In high school, there was a girl that was diagnosed with Crohn's as well. I started having issues with my joints at 10, and like there's so many other kids like that, and they don't learn about it. Teachers don't know how to help them with that kind of stuff, and there's just not enough education out there. There's not enough people that are advocating for educating or empowering the kids out there when it comes to autoimmune or immune system disorders. So that's why I'm really excited to work in this education.
And that was the slogan, by the way, for our brand new organization we're starting. Like, she's just soft launching it, I see. And so, basically it's coming soon. Don't worry about it yet, but the Autoimmune Alliance is going to be doing a lot of good work. Spreading a lot of awareness in schools, and we'll also be taking over a lot of WAAA's campus work. And so we're very excited for that. And part of that is Nicole, who's really going to be taking the charge over half of that operation, essentially. And so we're really glad to have you on board. Just thank you so much because you know so much about this. And so really that kind of expertise is what's really going to make the Autoimmune Alliance work, I think.
Yeah, the mixture of knowing education and advocacy, and like I worked in special education, so I know what it is necessary for accommodations, how to get those, what the laws are, but also just being chronically ill. I've done a lot of research into autoimmune diseases.
Really?
Ones. Yes, a lot. To the point where my dermatologist told me that I know more medical terminology than her residents. And I was like...
I've been told that too. And so much so, like with my surgeons, they're like, hey, I mean, you've been through this before. You want to assist? I'm like, well, I'm not good at cutting. So if that's going to be a problem, can't cut like straight. Right. And I'm like, I do want a pretty looking like incision. So, and they're like, okay, well then we'll have you scrub it next time. But yeah, no, they'll be so like, wait, why do you know all this terminology?
I have all of the symptoms and like the presentations of vasculitis, but I don't test for it in my blood work. So I am normal complementemic. And so I was like, what do you know about vasculitis? And like, if I do have vasculitis, I think it's normal complementemic because of like,
Try saying that 3 times.
Why do you know that? And I was was like, because I have all the symptoms and my blood work is not testing, my complements are not showing elevated, although they did prior to my hydroxychloroquine. So it could be the hydroxychloroquine is actually doing its job, but the vasculitis is still like causing issues. But it's like, of course I know that because I'm going to do the work. When I got my first biopsy for the discoid rash and the vasculitis issues, when I had the hives and like the rash all over my whole body, the first biopsy the person did was in the middle of my arm. There's no rash there. There has never been rash here. Ever. You can't diagnose in that way. To diagnose vasculitis, the biopsy has to be taken during active progression within the first 48 hours at the, like, where the site of the rash and healthy skin meet.
Right.
If I can read that and find that in a medical journal, why the fuck can a dermatologist not know that? So, like,
yeah,
I've done the research. I need to do the research because other people aren't. Because when I walk into the doctor's office, they're not doing the research on me before I get to that point, unfortunately.
Right.
And I get that they're overworked. And I get that, like, they have a billion different diagnoses that they need to understand at a base level, but we're not X's in an equation. You can't simplify a human being to one variable. We are all going to present differently. And even with AS, like that's on my list of like possibilities because it's genetic and my grandfather had it and he died from it. My uncle has it. My mom just got diagnosed with either that or psoriatic arthritis. So it's like, and when I was in the doctor's office, he was like, nah, I don't see any AS symptoms. And I was like, okay, but like the arthritis is really severe in my spine and nowhere else yet.
Right, exactly.
That's giving, but at the same time, my symptoms aren't at their worst in the morning. They're at their worst at night, which doesn't correlate with AS.
Right, but it doesn't mean you don't have it. And like what you were saying, the thing for me that's my new cause in life, or I guess continuing cause, because it always has been, you know, being a social worker, I've always advocated for everyone else.
Yeah.
And while I was in school for my MSW, I didn't realize that, I mean, this is when some of my symptoms were popping up and are continuing rather. And I was like, okay, you know what, this isn't normal anymore. I didn't realize I would have to start advocating for myself like you. I mean, really my medical gaslighting journey has been very similar to yours. Yeah. You know, even when I meet a new doctor now, because I have a pretty good team of doctors now. I have 12 physicians, all different specialists, who it's taken me years to like put them, you know, to have them on my team and to be happy and confident in what they're telling me. But it took a long time. But even when I have to find a new surgeon for a different joint now, because, you know, a lot of orthopedic surgeons don't all, I mean, they can't like fix every joint. They specialize only in certain joints. The first thing I'll still be told is, well, you're too young. You're 35. Why do you need a knee replacement? And it's like, you know what? I wish I knew that answer, but my body has different plans. And I can't help that I'm 35 in need of this, but please don't look at me as a one size fits all.
I am not the type of person that cares about making people uncomfortable because
I like it to an extent.
Okay.
So, like, when people are like, oh, you're too young to feel like that, I look them dead in the eyes and I say, well, chronic illness doesn't really care.
Right. It doesn't discriminate. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
you got to be an asshole sometimes. Yeah. Like, really. Like, you basically have to be an asshole.
I've had people
and
say, oh, you have lupus? Like, did you know that are you sure? Like, that's really dangerous. Like, you can die. I'm like, wow, thank you so much. I had no idea.
Right.
Yeah. Just needed a reminder real quick, you know?
Yes,
without you.
I live with it. Like,
right. Or I'll get, there's no way you have this many issues. And I'm like, okay.
And then the same
we're
people
done.
will be like, why aren't, like, judge you for your dishes not being done, or like, why aren't you like happy to come to this party at the drop of a hat? And it's like, so you know that I could die, but you don't understand that it impacts my life. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's like this weird like hypocrisy with people like that are like, oh, those diseases are so horrible, but then it's like, okay, well, I have to miss this, or I can't drink tonight, like I'm feeling sick, or I have a headache, I need to go home early, or I ran out of spoons. Like, then they get so mad at you, and it's like, I'm confused. Like,
like the fuck?
Do you care? Are you
right.
concerned about me?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
just like, what do you health, or the impact it has on you? Because that's what it feels like more often.
Well, another struggle for me is when a loved one or a friend or even someone I haven't talked to in a while will be like, how are you? And I literally, it takes me a few seconds before I respond. I'm like, do I give them my honest answer? Do I give them a neutral answer like, oh, you know, I'm okay, a little bit's hurting? Or do I just pretend everything's okay? Like, which answer should I give them? You know, and based on how I know certain people, like that's how I'll, you know, tell them. And I was telling Emmanuel this when we were discussing this on our podcast last week, that I'll have certain family members ask, you know, why don't you talk about what you go through more often? And I'm like, well, I haven't seen you in a while, and we're here to like celebrate. Like, I don't want to make it about me. And they're like, well, yeah, but if you don't talk about it, and I'm like, what? It means I'm not going through it? Like, it means I'm well? Yeah. Like, also, like, well, that's the impression you give off. And I'm like, yeah,
if I want to share it, it's my choice to decide when and who I want to share things with. I don't have to. That was something I had by somebody that was close to me, and they were like, well, the family needs to know. And I'm like, no, they don't. It's actually none of your business. If I want to tell you, I will tell you. The people that matter and need to know, it's me and my husband, and that is it. Those are the people that need to know, because those are the people that are supporting me in this. Other people know, of course, like my parents, like the people that are close to me, of course they're going to
know. Oh, yeah.
That's my choice. The family doesn't need to know. It has nothing to do with you, so don't make it about yourself. Like, so many people do that. It's just like, what?
Right. And, you know, it's all about attitude, and we end up being the best actors in the world because we feel like utter shit, and yet we're acting like, oh my god, today's full of rainbows and sparkles and unicorns, and it's the best day ever. But my response to the loved ones who I have told and who have said that to me before, I'm like, just ask me. Like, ask. How are you feeling today? And be honest. Like, you know, like, tell me that. Like, I'm a human being. Just ask me. Like, I don't mind sharing, but I also don't want it to overshadow why we're here to, you know, why we are gathering. Like, that's never been me, and it never will be me. And I also don't want to change the tone because, you know, people get uncomfortable with medical stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Or they get uncomfortable with my weird sense of humor sometimes. Like, oh, yeah, I feel like I'm dying today, but everything's dandy. Like, people get uncomfortable with that stuff. So
So I don't lie. I don't ever lie. So when somebody walks up to me and they're like, hey, how are you? My autistic ass will be like, I'm here.
I'll say that too.
I'm like,
I'll be like, I'm surviving.
I'm good. I'm happy. I'm great. Like, bitch, no, I'm not. I'm here. Like, I'm here. I exist. There's a saying, I think it's in like Swedish, and it's like a normal response to how are you, and it translates to up and not crying. And I want to bring that to be norm, because
I like that.
Hell yeah.
I am up and I'm not crying. I'm not.
Love it. I like
All
that.
All right.
Yeah. Or I'll be like, I'm surviving. And it's true. Not lying. I'm here. I'm in the flesh. I'm breathing. But,
all right, Emmanuel. What?
Yeah. What?
I keep
Emmanuel
trying to interrupt
wants to run the show today, so.
I keep I've been trying to interrupt for the last 5 minutes.
Do it.
But we are in like the halfway mark now.
before you do that a
No.
bit, hold on.
Okay.
You do this. Again, Nicole and I like tend to digress, or not. We stay on topic, but kind of not, because we will just get the ideas flowing on how to make something happen in our like organizational meetings, and I know it annoys the shit out of everyone, and because the way they've said it is like, yeah, you've definitely added something to our meetings. But
The
Emmanuel
meetings used to be like 90% like the fundraising people talking, and then Ashley showed up, and like we had to create a brand new meeting because that was a fundraising. We had to make a new one because Ashley would just dominate the entire thing with like, the podcast. Well, okay, I would. Okay, me and you would, because I'd be talking about the legislative stuff, and you talk about the podcast. Mm-hmm. I'd be like an hour and a half, and then finally the fundraising team would like show up, and they're just like, "Fuck this!" Like, they give like no updates because they're tired or whatever. So. Yeah,
but it was on track because I'm like, oh well, that's a good idea. Let's do this, 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 and this, and then Nicole, I'm gonna blame her too, joined, and then she and I realized we were long lost sisters and have a similar train of thinking, and then we just started brainstorming there, and yeah. So what
that was
in conclusion, you knew what you were signing up for when you decided. When we were talking about our next episode, and we're like, yeah, let's have Nicole on.
True.
So, yeah.
We should have Nicole on again, honestly. Maybe we can talk about other things, interview other people. Shit.
You can have me
sorry,
on
but not sorry.
You want.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what's the last point? Okay.
All right, go ahead.
No, you. That wasn't 3 points. I answered the 3 questions.
All right, so now we're done. I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Okay, it's been real, guys.
Wendy Williams.
Emmanuel, you want to be the host today because I dominate things apparently. So go ahead.
That's why you're the host. We need the dominant. Okay, but I have the stories up, so I'm the master of that one part.
The master of the story.
Of the news.
Oh, and by the way, when you shared the news earlier, you're like, I have good news, and then you psyched us out. So better be legit. I was like, it better be legit news this time.
But I promise this is actual good news, and very, very good news. We'll be the judge. And so we actually talked about this a little bit before the show. Scientists, it's actually also on our Instagram at WAAA. Scientists just found a brand new immunotherapy that can help people with autoimmune diseases. Specifically, what this technology does, it's called CAR-MSC. You might have heard of the CAR-T treatment. It's a brand new treatment they're creating that can really hunt down and destroy these kind of dangerous cells. But with this new treatment, the biggest difference, because half of it was just really complicated jargon. I was just looking at it. You know, I went to college and everything. I was like, what in the hell are they talking about? But at the very end, they kind of got to the point, which is that this new treatment can specifically target different diseases differently. So instead of treating the autoimmune response with just one kind of treatment, they can really tailor it specifically to different diseases, which can really change people's lives. But I mean, I guess we'll kind of open it up to everyone else. I mean, what do y'all think about this? Do y'all think this is really going to change things for our community, or will it just be another kind of little invention that we have that makes life like slightly better?
I'm really interested in what is like the technology of it, right? Like, because autoimmune diseases and like immune system disorders are using, like, it's our own body like attacking itself. It's our own immune system that's like overactive, right?
Right.
So it gives me like how, you know how COVID, like when it replicated it, like it was like RSV or whatever it was, the way it replicated, it used your own cells to replicate, which is why it like presented so differently in every person, and why it like was so hard for them to find, like, to make the vaccine for it. So like I wonder if like it uses similar technology to that to replicate, right? Because it should be using our own cells, and I think it's using stem cells. From what I saw, it uses stem cells. So if it's using those stem cells, it's replicating just those stem cells, or if it like mixes with your own cells, so it's replicating mixed with your own cells to make them healthier and not evil anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Not evil anymore. Decorrupt their souls.
Well,
It
these
does an
are evil
exorcism.
cells that we
So
have in our
hold on, I
bodies.
pulled up. Hold on, I pulled up the article. Okay, here's what it says. So the new technique involves combining chimeric antigen receptors, so that's CAR, and I've heard a lot about this new treatment.
Okay.
There's been a lot of buzz about this.
Mm-hmm.
But it combines that with something called mesenchymal stromal cells.
Mm-hmm.
And what these cells do, it says, is that they are, quote, known for calming down the immune system, controlling inflammation, and promoting immune tolerance to prevent the body's own tissues from being attacked.
Oh,
And so that's
that
extremely.
sounds cool.
Oh, yeah. So that's why this is so new. These CAR treatments, they've been talking about those for like a year now, but combined with MSCs, that's what's going to really make the big difference and really potentially stop the autoimmune response completely.
What I'd be
It
interested
might not, yeah, or it could
go
stop the symptoms at least. Yeah.
What I'd be interested in is the vessel that is used to give us this treatment. Is it going to be an injection? Is it an infusion? Is it something that we have to, like, is it a pill? Like, I'd be really interested in that.
And it's the United
It would have to
States,
be an injection.
so we
Not
all know
necessarily. I mean,
it's
you
not
Or
should see.
to have it, to really, because I think most stem cell treatments are injections, right? I don't know.
I mean, I can't say I've ever had a stem cell treatment. So
Yeah, no.
yeah, so I don't know.
Oh no, wait, no, I know my dad or my stepdad, he actually gets some for his knee just to help it operate. And that's usually an injection. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, but again, if this is targeting very specific autoimmune issues, like different ones, like I wonder, are they going to come up with a treatment? Like, because like Nicole's on a completely different treatment than I am for my psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis than she is for her lupus, you know, and let's say it comes up with that, like, that's why I'd be really interested to know. And it seems like it's still kind of in its infancy. And then, not to get political, and I haven't heard this in the
Get political.
news in
Let's
a
go.
long time, but remember how Nicole's all excited. But remember how stem cell research was such a huge controversial issue back in the day.
Oh yeah, that was back. Yeah.
Well, I wonder with this,
the way that we're going backwards with all this fucking.
well, that's what I'm wondering. I wonder if it would make it controversial again, and or hopefully by the time they've gained some, you know, groundwork on this and have done more studies and have targeted it and have decided what autoimmune issues they're trying to, you know, help.
My biggest concern.
I wonder if it won't be as controversial by the time this is a thing, because, you know, again, we're already, I don't even know if I'd call us a marginalized community. I just don't feel there's enough awareness in our community, and or I don't feel like we're taken seriously. So I don't know if I'd consider us marginalized, and I don't know how you feel about that, Nicole or Emmanuel.
Well,
but
Emmanuel,
I have a strong opinion, but I'll let Nicole go first.
Emmanuel is much more marginalized because of the stigma and the history of AIDS.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that specifically is very marginalized. And
I actually disagree.
Really?
I feel as if these days it's so well understood and like so like common that's like I have a much easier time. Like no one tells me my disease in my head. No one tells me it doesn't exist.
That's true.
No one tells me, oh, I didn't get a late diagnosis. Oh, I got late because I didn't get tested until late. But like the test itself was pretty easy. Like, okay, boom, you know you
but
have
no
it.
One
and so definitely the least marginalized out of everyone here because you guys, when you have a rare illness, no one really understands what's going on. Okay. And a lot of times they don't even really try to understand either. Whereas with me, people know it's serious. They take it seriously and they treat me seriously based on it.
I guess Emmanuel, I was just thinking more the stigma with the history of it and like the way that
and how it's contracted and everything. Is that what you're getting at?
But
No, I haven't really seen any of that. But to be fair, I spend most of my time in DC though,
oh yeah, that's fair.
or in the suburbs of Philadelphia, right? So
Yeah,
like that's going to
that's
be a lot different. So in my case, I'm not more. If I were in like Alabama,
You're not
in
in
like
Florida.
in the forests, in the trailer park,
In
yeah,
the
I'd have some
forest.
serious issues with the AIDS
Yeah.
diagnosis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
True.
So my thing though, what I am most concerned about isn't the like so much. What was the word that you were just using? The controversy of
Marginalized?
it. It's the
Oh
fact that like stem cell research and all of these new treatments, anything that's new treatment wise in the United States is always so unaffordable and untouchable, right? Like,
That's true.
is anybody
mhm.
that is a normal person going to be able to use this, or is it just
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman, Selena Gomez, and all of the famous people with autoimmune diseases that are going to get a cure, and then we're all going to be suffering down here for the rest of our lives fighting for disability?
That's
Right.
actually
Yeah.
that's similar to what I was going to say. My biggest issue is going to be the cost. It's kind of like how Magic Johnson, back in the 80s, there was no chance of survival. He still made it because he's just that rich, right? He just had those many, even AIDS in the 90s. He was like, fuck it, I'm going to survive. And man just made it. Like in South Park, they joked that the cure for AIDS was just injections of cash directly into your veins. Just liquid $1,000,000 right inside the veins was the treatment.
That's what
It
it
might be the
was.
same way for this new treatment, especially with stem cells, as those treatments are usually very expensive, especially when you're mixing like specialized stem cells with all this other stuff. I mean, I can see that getting pretty bad. As far as controversy, I actually don't see that. I feel like back when stem cells were controversial, that was in the pre-Trump days, right? That's when we were arguing about the war on Christmas, or whether you say Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays or some nonsense like that. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel as if now the conservatism's kind of moved to just being super pro-Trump, not so much
I
stem
don't know, with
cells or
all
caring
of
about
the
that. I don't know.
abortion stuff
And
though.
having worked for like a lot of conservatives, I can tell you that
That
based on my kind of feeling, having worked with them a lot, like I don't think they
My
care about
issue is
stem
like
cells.
I live in Florida,
I
so
don't know.
like I hear all this shit with the abortion and all that stuff.
right.
Abortion is the killing of babies, right? That's what they think of
Oh
it.
yeah.
That's what they fucking think. That is not what it is. And stem cells come from human tissue. So
Right.
Oh yeah.
that's where that connection is. So if we're going that
Oh, yeah.
way, the chance of that coming back up, I mean, with all this bullshit. But I think that a lot of people are recognizing that conservatives are biting their own selves in the ass with a lot of this shit. And hopefully, like, once we get a lot of like the lawsuits going for the people that are dealing with this shit, hopefully it
Oh
all
yeah.
gets rescinded. But
Yeah. That when I
Yeah.
thought that there might be more controversy, that's what I was thinking too, Nicole, like due to all the stuff about abortion in the news right now. But yeah, I mean, it gives me hope, but I'm like cautiously optimistic about this.
Yeah.
Because also what there are so many autoimmune diseases out there, as we know. So which one is it? Which ones are they targeting? And then also without insurance, I know how much my injections would be a month. I'm on Cosentyx, which is a biologic for my psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis. Without insurance, that would be an $8,000 injection, and I take that once a month. So thankfully, with the savings card and insurance, I pay like $25 for it a month. And then Aimovig for my migraines, that is also like a $5,000 monthly injection. And I'm always kidding around with the pharmacist. I'm like, is there like gold flakes in here somewhere that I can't see? Like, why is it so expensive? And like, these are our lifelines. Without this, I would not be able to get out of bed. Like, this is my fourth biologic I've been on now. And so for me, it's still a little too early to tell if it's working or slowing the progression down of my diseases. But I know without it, I would be in worse shape. And right now I'm also nervous because I'm coming up on, in a few weeks, the time of my injection, and my insurance company is telling me they want me to go back on something that I had an allergic reaction to. and so they're denying my use for Cosentyx, and they've done this to me before. And I know my rheumatologist and I have discussed that if I can't be on Cosentyx, then I have to go up to the next class of medications, which would include like methotrexate, which I'm terrified of. Just due to the class of medications it is. But again, I digress. But this gives me hope. And who put this study out, by the way? Did it say?
So this was, let me pull this back up. This was by, Mayo Clinic.
Oh, okay. Well, then
and the
we know
study
that's...
was,
Go ahead.
study was published in Nature Biomedical Engineering. That's all.
So we know that it's a legit, study, and that there's probably going to be a lot of what's the word? A lot
like additional follow up.
Yeah, and just probably a lot of support in seeing this through. So I'd be really interested to see where this goes. Does it give you hope at all, Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, to the point, like I said, if it's affordable, that would be delightful.
Right.
Like, I don't know, it would be great. And if we learn about like the side effects of it, I mean, the medication I'm on now, if I use it long enough, I'll go blind. So, I mean, anything is
something to look forward to. Okay.
There's anything that helps and has better side effects will be great as long as we can afford it. Because right now,
yeah, I'd want to know what the side effects are too, of course, because that's always
instant death.
Well,
when I see those ads where they literally say instant death as a side effect, I'm like,
I make
what?
fun of those ads all the time, and then if they're like camping or something, I'll be like, oh look, if I go on this medication, I could go paint or camp or something.
Yeah,
and if you died, call your doctor. Like that's what I'll say.
I'll have instant death while I'm looking at the mountains or the Grand Canyon.
At least you have like a great way to go. I don't know.
Right? At least you have pretty scenery. Like, yeah, exactly.
We were just talking about, okay, so this is not one of our listed topics, but I want to know
off script.
What your guys' opinion on this are as other people with chronic illnesses, because I was talking to my mom about this yesterday, and assisted suicide, right? Assisted suicide right now in the U.S., legally, you can only do it if you have been diagnosed with something that is terminal, and you have 6 months or less to live, right? But in my opinion, right, if I get to a point where I'm like 80 years old, or I might not make it that far before all the pain and the shit gets too much, right? If I make it to an older age, like 70 something, and the pain is just unbelievably overwhelming, I'm not terminal. I'm not going to die in 6 months, but I am not living, right? So at that point, like, I should be able to decide if my life has lived, like, I've lived long enough that I just want to, get a lethal injection and call it a day. Like, that should be our decision, I think. And as somebody with, like, a chronic illness, I understand that because I know what it's like to live in excruciating pain. And if comes a point where it's like 10 years straight of unbearable pain and I'm like, I'm done, then I deserve the choice to do that. But because of the way it's written right now, unless you're going to die in 6 months, then you can't do it in the U.S. And I find that interesting.
I think you can do it in Oregon, actually. I think there's only one state that allows it with that.
No, there's like a few states that allow assisted suicide, but all of the states that allow it, at least that we looked at, all say within only if you've been...
Well, right, yeah, they have, yeah.
So
let me pull that out.
There's 10 states, or 10 or 11 states, Maine, Oregon, Washington, that allow assisted suicide, but only if you only have 6 months or less to live. So if you're somebody like us that has their whole life to live, but is basically bedridden and not living a life, that doesn't count as giving 6 months to live, right? So we don't count.
Mm.
Right.
We're miserable and we're not living a life, but we haven't been given 6 months to live, so we wouldn't qualify.
So I have a long answer to that,
Okay.
Emmanuel, so I don't know if you want to go first, because I have
real
the
quick,
social worker in me answer and
Oh,
the chronic
yeah.
illness.
So all I'll say about it is that in Oregon, I just confirmed that, yeah, even in Oregon, it's only for people terminally ill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's all I had to say.
And I just think it's interesting. I wanted to know your
No,
thoughts
no.
on it.
Do you want to go, Emmanuel? Because I have a longer
Sure.
answer.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's hard for me because there's that part of me that's like very optimistic to the point where I'm like, well, especially with this new treatment coming out that can stop the autoimmune response, maybe if they just wait a little bit longer, they'll be able to live that long life and live happily. And so it's kind of hard for me to make a strong decision on it.
Mhm.
I guess I would lean towards saying it should be legal. It should be a choice.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say I necessarily support that choice, but I think that there are plenty of cases where it is kind of, the right thing to do, essentially.
Mhm.
I just, I kind of worry that, I guess it sounds silly, but the way science works, at least a few people will take that option who would have maybe literally waited a week and then boom, the new evidence would have come out. So I guess I'm just thinking of that perspective, but realistically, I think that's something that should be someone's choice. And I'd say I support it being legal at the very least.
So I've had to have this discussion many times, being a clinical social worker. So what you were talking about, Nicole, is quality versus quantity of life. If we're not living a very high quality of life, whether we're 20 years old or 99 years old, why would we want to be put in so much pain, right? And I support that to an extent. I'm all for patient autonomy or for self-autonomy, However, I feel that if people in the autoimmune community are having to be faced with this decision that they'd rather die, and I've been there, like I've had those thoughts, because it's like I cannot get through the day living like this, being in so much pain. Like I can't do this forever. Like I've been there, so I can relate in that regard. I feel though that that's a bigger call, a big cry for help, and that the medical community are helping professionals. Everybody needs to step it up. If that's where 26 million Americans who are affected by chronic illnesses are being faced with that decision, that's a good fucking point. I would rather try to do physician assisted suicide than do anything else, because I just can't take it anymore. Then something seriously needs to change in our country, in the world, in society, wherever. We need more mental health resources. We already know, and you talked about it a little bit, Nicole. Yeah. Mental health is a huge aspect of this that a lot of people just don't realize, or just think, oh, well, it's just a headache. Like, it can't be that bad. Like, they don't even know what they're talking about. Yeah. Because you try being in pain from head to toe on a daily basis and tell me how happy of a person you're going to be after dealing with that, even for one day.
I think we're a delight.
Right. And so I think it's a bigger issue. Yeah, and it breaks my heart again.
Like that perspective and that point.
Yeah, and it breaks my heart that anybody in our community or elsewise, just people who don't have a chronic illness and deal with suicidal ideations on a daily basis. It breaks my heart that they feel that there is just no hope or support for them.
I think
to seek out help. But again, that's also shows that there is help out there, but to an extent.
I
And
think there's a difference though as well between like the mental health aspect and like physical health aspect, right? Like I do have like anxiety, depression, all that jazz. That one doesn't control my life, and I think that like yeah, depression wise stuff like that, that's a completely different topic than health wise, right? Like if you are going to have heart failure and you continue to have heart failure and it's putting your family in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and like you have this crazy perspective, yes, should the system change so that this is not what you're thinking about? Yes. In reality, is that going to happen? No. So,
No.
should you have the opportunity to, if you've already lived a long, full life, to make that choice for yourself? Yeah. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
But in
So
my
I'd say
30s,
one
I don't.
worry.
Oh, go ahead.
It's just one worry I kind of have is what I think this isn't something that has to happen automatically if you have physician assisted suicide. I think something we have to specifically work against. I think that, if you look at Canada, you see that a lot of people and doctors will literally just tell their patients, oh, yeah, just get the physician assisted suicide. We don't really want to go through like all this extra work or whatever. And they'll literally just suggest to patients that they should just get the suicide, especially if their income is low. And there's many cases of that happening in
That's
Canada.
definitely
And so there is a lot of stuff like that where that isn't an argument against making it legal, but I think it's something that we have to look out for,
yeah,
especially in a system like America, where a lot of people are going to be thinking about, well, I can go into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, or I could kill myself. And a lot of people are going to make that decision based on the debt.
Nobody else should be suggesting
Yeah.
physician like assisted suicide. That is nobody's choice outside of a person. They should be explaining the negatives of it
Oh, yeah.
and helping you decide whether or not it's your mental health or your lack of hope, or whether or not you've made a logical choice, right? Like I always tell people that have mental health struggles that you should never make a choice in the midst of depression. You should never
Right.
make a choice in the midst of anxiety, right? You know the difference.
Right.
Usually, unless you're like experiencing psychosis, a lot of people that have high functioning anxiety or high functioning depression, they understand the difference, right? I can see like my depression and be like, nope, that's a depression thought. Or, okay, I'm feeling really depressed right now. I want to move across the country. That is a thought that goes through my head all the fucking time. I am not allowed to make that choice during depressive episodes. If I am happy and I still want to move across the country, then we can think about it. But if I am depressed and I want to move across the country, that is not a choice I'm going to make. And I feel like that's like something that should be definitely explained and promoted there as well, right? Like you don't make that decision when you're feeling down and depressed and hopeless. You make that decision when you are fully capable of thinking and you're logical, right? Like I can make that decision when I am there in my own brain and I am actually literally weighing the positives, the negatives, the everything. I'm not just taking it like, oh, I'm so done today. Like, no, like that's not the way it should work. And I feel like that's not the way it would work. But, just my thoughts.
Right. And then, like you, I tell my patients all the time that, especially patients I've seen in the emergency room who are there on a 5150, which in California, that's a 72-hour psychiatric hold due to suicidal attempts, ideations, and or homicidal attempts, depending on the circumstances of the situation. I'll tell them, look, you're going to get through this. This is just a bump in the road. Your mental illness does not define you, just like I try not to let my physical illnesses define me. My name is Ashley, and I happen to have ankylosing spondylitis, fibromyalgia, psoriatic arthritis, etc. Not, oh, I have ankylosing spondylitis, psoriatic arthritis. Oh, and by the way, my name is Ashley. You know, there's a difference, and I'll always try to do that with them.
I am a
You
lot
know,
of
or
things,
anybody I come across that,
not
you know,
just
is
me.
just struggling. I mean, the world is tough out there. We were lied to as kids. We weren't told adulting sucks. But you know, and that's why the power of this podcast and WAAA, the power of the organization to empower others, is so important, because at the end of the day, if there's no one else to advocate for us, then we need to advocate for us,
Oh
and
yeah.
we need to spread the word on how to do that. And even if we don't have all the answers, you know, we're starting somewhere, right? So yeah. And like you were saying, Nicole, some of, like, if you continue on your medications, you might go blind. I mean, if I continue on some of my medications, I might have kidney issues down the line. And I've been the social worker helping patients who need to go on dialysis, you know, so I know what that looks like. So tying it back into the physician assisted suicide, even knowing that that might be in my future, I don't know if I would still go down that route with the physician, you know, assisted suicide. I think it would just depend. I would have to know more information, I guess. But just knowing that little piece of information, while it's not going to be fun, I know tons of people on dialysis or who have had kidney transplants who still live high quality lives. And that's probably what I would want to hope that would look like for me, if that were what my future looks like. You know, so yeah, it is.
I'm like picturing like
Oh
when you
yeah.
can't take care of yourself anymore.
Oh, of course. Right,
Like,
of course.
that's what I'm picturing. That's what our conversation was about yesterday. Like, my mom and I
Got
are
it.
both like big,
Like bedbound, can't
we're
fend for
really
yourself.
hyper independent. We're like, if I can't take care of myself, ain't nobody taking care of me. I'm just
Right. And then that, I mean, that goes into a whole nother conversation. Like, with, if you have an advanced healthcare directive, like, do you want to be a full code? Do you want to be a do not resuscitate or do not intubate? I mean, it kind of ties into all of that too, which, again, as a clinical social worker, I've had to assist in those conversations many, many times. And again, at the end of the day, you know, it comes down to your own autonomy, you know,
Oh yeah.
and hopefully you've made an informed decision and realize what you want, and hopefully your loved ones will carry that through, because I've also seen it where loved ones try to fight that, even if it's a notarized document and these are their wishes. And so it's my job to step up and be like, these are their wishes, and the physician has to step up too and be like, this is the patient's wishes. They didn't make these wishes under duress, you know, and this is what, you know, this is what it'll look like if you don't honor their wishes, you know, and we have to honor their wishes.
On a lighter note, I want to be cremated and become a tree.
A
My
tree.
mom agreed that she
What?
also become a tree. And then we started thinking about, is this how haunted forests start?
What?
Then you can do that.
Yo, we went from like
and become the soil that grows a tree. You can be cremated and become a tree. You can be cremated and become coral.
Can I be cremated and become like, I don't know, something cool?
Like what?
Like a tree? Like I'd just be sitting there the whole time. Like I'd be very bored as a tree. I have severe ADHD. Being a tree is not going to work. I cannot stay still for like 80 years, not however long a damn
80
tree
years,
lives.
that's young. That's a long
100 years? Like no way. Just sitting there, like no. Kill me, cut me down.
We're not being reborn. I'm not talking about.
That's why I want
we're just
shit.
using our juices to nourish the tree, all right?
Oh, what?
Yeah, but you talked about a haunted tree, Nicole, and like I only have two references: the haunted house at Disneyland, and then the haunted forest in Sleepy Hollow, the movie. Like, I've never been to an actual haunted forest, so I don't know where you would create one of those.
I don't know, but I'm scared of the dark, so I've not been in the haunted forest either.
Oh, and then
Oh my,
C-block.
that reminded me. Hold on. Like when I was like
Are you
in
afraid
high
of
school, like very early high school, like 14, 15, there was this abandoned, like old girls Catholic school, like a whole campus basically near my house. Like they had like a church, they had a whole bunch of dorms, they had a whole bunch of school buildings, all that.
Was
And
it
me and my
haunted?
friends would just, it looked like a zombie apocalypse movie. Because it's been abandoned for like 20 years. It's like this weird, like 1960s style, like
But was it like
buildings and
deemed
everything.
haunted? Because they do
Oh,
that with
it looked
places.
haunted. So we went inside the abandoned church, completely dark, graffiti everywhere. Like it was the creepiest moment in my life. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a random story.
That is a random story. We had Carnegie's steel factory that was supposedly haunted. I never did it. I have better self-preservation skills than you.
All right.
True.
I love how we went from like talking serious stuff to now we're talking about like haunted houses and things that have nothing to do with what we're talking about.
All right. Well, speaking of what we're talking about, we have our next story here. 1 in 3 LGBTQ adults, say they've been treated unfairly by a healthcare provider. Nearly 1/4 who reported having negative healthcare experience said those experiences caused their health to get worse. And this was compared to only 9% of non-LGBTQ adults. I'm a part of that community myself. I don't think I've been treated unfairly necessarily, but I know a lot of people have, especially depending on where you live. If you're diagnosed with AIDS, everyone's going to look at you a certain way, especially if they assume that you're a certain sexuality based on that diagnosis. So at least my experience has been that bad, but I've seen a lot of people who have suffered from stuff like that. What have your experiences been when it comes to, I guess in your guys' case, really witnessing that kind of mistreatment?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my case, I am also part of that community, but obviously not obviously. So I haven't had like that impact me in like doctor's appointments and stuff like that. But I also am very educated in, and I participate in our community a lot. So I have been to like educational trans panels where I heard the like experiences of some of people that have gone through gender affirming care and everything like that, and the mistreatment and that they have dealt with. And I know that that probably accounts for a good chunk of those people that are being mistreated. And for me, that's just absolutely wild, because why is it that at 16 I can make my tits bigger, but I can't make the decision to get rid of them? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I can make bigger tits so that I can be sexualized as a child, but I can't get rid of them because I don't want to be. Whether or not it's because I am a trans person or just somebody that's done with being sexualized. Like, that's personally how I feel. And when it comes to that, there's also different kinds of gender affirming care, like hormones, where we have things like Viagra is gender affirming care, but life saving hormones for or hormone blockers for a trans child that can decrease their possibility of suicide by like 60% is not okay. But we can give that old man who doesn't have what it takes to get his stick up Viagra, right? Like, it's so hypocritical and so contradictory that is absurd to me. And I feel like that has a big part of that 1/3, right, percentage. I feel like trans people probably take a big part of that.
For me, I was going to say, so I'm an ally of the community, and I have friends and loved ones who are, members of the community too. And so I've always made it a point to become very educated and to know what the new terms are, because LGBTQA has also expanded many times, and to always just be informed and also be very culturally sensitive to people's needs. And never once, though, as a social worker or just as a person, when I don't have my social work hat on, have I ever treated somebody differently due to being trans or them, whatever their
Can I tell a story?
You got okay.
Sorry, I got excited. I forgot about that aspect of things. So, like, not medically, but personally, I saw a therapist, a psychologist once, who was specifically supposed to be trained to support people in the LGBTQ community. And this bitch, I told her that yes, I am pansexual, I am poly, but I am in a monogamous relationship with a man. She was like, so do you sleep with women? And I was like, ma'am, what do you not understand about monogamy? And she was so insensitive, and she was like, oh, well, basically saying that my relationships with women wouldn't count. Like, she discounted it and fetishized me, and I was like, you are specifically stating that you are here as a specialist for LGBTQ people. She was like, she has a master's in this shit, and she's over here acting like just because I'm poly, just because I'm pansexual, just because I'm attracted to people other than men, that I'm gonna cheat on my husband behind his back. I was like, no, honey, we are communicating, and our communication and our consent is that we are in a monogamous relationship, and thus I am monogamous. I am not, she assumed promiscuity because I'm queer. And I was like, somebody that literally says that they are LGBTQ specialized. And I was like, so yeah, I have been disrespected by a medical professional because of my sexuality.
Let's back up for a second. So what do you mean when she said that you didn't take your relationships with women seriously or something? What did she even mean by that?
She didn't. To her, me being with a woman didn't count as Yeah. So she was like, oh, well, do you sleep with women? I'm like, I just told you I was in a monogamous relationship with my husband. Did you hear that? Or are you just discounting it? Because me being with women is doesn't matter in comparison.
Oh, okay.
Right? She was that I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt with that one, because
okay, got you.
I'm unsure where else she was going with that, because I literally specifically told her, and then she had the audacity to have that take on it. This is the same woman told me that she after talking about how I wanted a good therapist because chronic illness is really hard to deal with. And so when I explained to her what was going on with me and all of the things with my health and everything, she was like, oh, I know what's wrong with you. I looked at this man and I was like, first off, there's nothing wrong with me, honey. And then she started talking about my thyroid and how she's also a health coach. So this was the worst therapist experience I've ever had in my life.
Okay, yeah.
But from the LGBTQ side of things, I was like, you specifically put that you are a specialist. You have a master's in this shit. And you have the audacity to assume that I am not faithful to my husband because I am queer. When I just told you that I'm in a monogamous relationship. I'm sorry. What?
Yes, so
legitimately the worst therapist ever.
Literally.
So basically, the therapist just heard the word poly.
Yeah,
and just went from there. Just ears turned off immediately after that.
Yeah, and then I was like, poly is the same thing as bisexual. Being pansexual, I am attracted to more than one gender. I am attracted to people based off of who they are. Just because I'm with a man does not make me less attracted to women. Just because I am in a monogamous relationship doesn't make me not poly. I am poly, but I'm in a monogamous relationship. I can choose whether or not to act on certain things just because that's who I am, right? And then she just, I was pissed.
I don't blame you. And again, so as a clinician, I have made it my mission to never,
Do that.
while we all have our own biases, of course, I've made it my mission to always check those at the door, which a good mental health clinician, helping professional is supposed to do.
Mhm.
That you're here to treat or to help your patient and just active listen to what they're saying and what they need from you. And so, again, being an ally of the community, I have just always made it a point that no matter what they're there for, why a patient has come to the hospital, and if they decide to choose to tell me that, they're trans or however they identify, that, then that's how they identify. Who am I to say you can't identify that way? Or, well, that means this, and this, because that's not okay. And they're human beings too. And you and I were talking a little bit about this before, Nicole, before we started filming, that I've had kiddos, who have had a lot of trauma that I've seen in the ER that are there for a psychiatric hold usually. And sometimes, very rarely though, is it an attention-seeking behavior that they start changing their identities, or they cut their hair a certain way, or they start dressing a certain way. It's usually not attention-seeking, but sometimes it is, and I've only seen that on a few rare occasions, and so much so where other medical staff I've worked with are like, oh God, they're here again, and what's their identity today? And that can be very...
Who and what is that hurting? No one.
Right. And so me being the social worker have had to say, they're not hurting anybody. And if this is how they're identifying today, then this is how they're identifying today, whether there's psychosis there or not. But I do know, going back to what you were saying, Emmanuel, and based off of Nicole's, accounts, that it is a very real problem that we have in society, and medical issues or not, I feel that unfortunately we've always treated the community very differently. And again, at the end of the day, I don't understand why, because they're not hurting anybody, and love is love. And however you identify, again, as long as you're not hurting yourself or others, like, I'm all for it. And I will treat you as however you want to be, however you identify. If you want me to address you this way, I will address you that way.
Every medical professional was like that.
I know. And again, step one, being a, I guess, medical helping professional, if you will. Step one is you're supposed to check your biases at the door. And unfortunately, a lot of people do not do that.
There are doctors, and this goes back to the abortion issue too, right? That they're letting things like religion come in between medical necessity. And it's like, I'm sorry, but last time I checked, as a medical professional, you take an oath to help people, right? And it's irregardless of their sexuality or whatever your fucking beliefs are, right? Like, your beliefs are irrelevant right now. You are a doctor. You do what's right. And if you can't make that choice, if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have a very personal story to go along with that, but maybe we'll talk about that on a different episode.
Okay.
But it's just kind of how things aren't being taken into consideration with abortion rights, and how it's a one size fits all, and it's religion or not. Again, it'll be a story I'll share another time. Because I know
we're like a couple of episodes or whenever the hell that comes out.
Right, exactly.
We should watch the Wendy Williams documentary, and then we'll talk about that next time.
Oh yeah, we should.
Or the time after that, whenever, I don't know.
The date. Should we get on Zoom and watch it together, guys? That would be really cute.
I know, we should have a viewing party or something.
That could be fun as hell. Yeah.
No, that would be really interesting. Some homework assignments for us. I don't know. We kind of, spoke about a lot of stuff here today.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry for the door slamming in the background. We we had good times. We had some serious times, and that's kind
We
of
got one more story.
Oh, okay.
We're not done yet.
I thought we were supposed to wrap up. So, geez.
We got one more good time. One more.
Emmanuel, you're the host today, not me. Go ahead.
We got one last good time. Hold on. Well, it's not good news though. Long COVID cases surge. This is it's a bad time, I guess.
You're gonna have to work on your transitions, Emmanuel, because you said we had good news the first time, and then it's like it's all in your head, and then you're like, oh, I have one more good news story, and then oh wait, it's not good news. Long COVID is on the rise.
Terrible. Long COVID on the rise.
I love that.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked by the numbers here, and until I looked at it like seconds ago, I had no idea. 17.6% of Americans say they have experienced long COVID. And this is, remember, now this is all brand new. We're not sure. A lot of people are saying it's an autoimmune disease, at least in a certain number of cases it is. This is massive. If this is, true, this could mean twice as many people are autoimmune as we originally thought.
Okay.
And this is compared to October 2023, when those numbers were 14%. So it's just going up and up and up. And apparently it's not just the federal numbers. In some states, it's really bad. My stepfather's from North Carolina. In his state, it's 20% right now. That's 1 in 5, and that's just insane. So I guess I'll once again send it to you guys. What do you think about this? Because I think this is probably the biggest change in autoimmunity that we've seen ever.
I got 2 things. Okay. One, this is like self-reported long COVID symptoms, which is always a little especially when long COVID symptoms are things like shortness of breath and stuff like that. And when we have issue like long COVID, like COVID itself caused us all to be kind of inside and stopped us from being as active as we were, especially with all the masks and gyms and stuff like that. And so it's like when it's self-reported, okay, if you're having shortness of breath now, okay, when was the last time you went for that run that you used to do all the time back then? So that's one thing. Not saying that that's the way that it.
So you think it's bullshit, basically?
I don't think it's bullshit. I know, long COVID, what was the question? What was the survey there? Because when things are self-reported like that in such big numbers, you just, I don't know. Not everybody in the world is very educated. A lot of people Google their symptoms and think they're dying of cancer. And that's why when I go into the doctor and I have information, they think that I'm a hypochondriac, and I'm like, no, honey, I actually did research, right? But then the second thing is what I said before when we were talking about it, which is COVID was extremely traumatizing to a lot of people. Being it was scary. A lot of people lost someone, and that causes grief. That is traumatic. A lot of people just being cooped up inside or losing their jobs. There was a lot of trauma that impacted people from COVID. And trauma is known to trigger the genetic components of an autoimmune disease. So that could definitely have something to do with that surge too, with autoimmune symptoms, because that trauma could have triggered a lot of people that were living their lives without trauma, without their gene being triggered like mine was, or they could have had a dormant autoimmune disease, an autoimmune genetics, and that was triggered by COVID. I wonder if that has an impact on those numbers as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely could. And I also have more data here. So I scroll down a little bit. And apparently there's 2 different ways of looking at it. So there's that Census Bureau number, which, I mean, honestly, I think you're kind of right. People can just kind of bullshit that. They just look at it, on the internet, like, oh, I have XYZ symptoms. People do that with mental illnesses all the time. Like all the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I can kind of see that happening.
Oh yeah, I have anxiety, and I'm like, honey,
I get nervous when I ask someone out to prom. I must have anxiety. Like, no, it's normal. Sorry.
Like, no.
Well,
that's normal.
There's always those outliers in research and everything like that, which I think, hoping that this is a legitimate source that came out with who came out with this study. Oh
yeah. Oh, but also I got more. So apparently the best indicator is wastewater. And so testing wastewater for COVID, this is what it says. Testing wastewater for COVID levels becoming one of the most reliable measures of estimating infection. And so the viral rate started creeping up in October and peaked on December 30th, and then just kind of kept going from there, which would kind of correspond with more long COVID happening now, if more COVID was happening in October and December of last year. And so they said that in North Carolina, for example, for most of 2023, they reported fewer than 10 million viral gene copies per state resident. In late July, that number shot up to 25 million. And then in March 2023, in North Carolina is when it peaked at 71 million per capita. And so we are seeing a real increase in this disease, even if we look at the wastewater, which doesn't fall victim to the same problems that we have with other data. And so I think this is, once again, like a huge issue. Like, we barely treat just people with the more established autoimmune diseases properly. We have no idea what this new long COVID autoimmunity looks like over time. It's only been around for a few years. And so, for example, like HIV, for example, takes between 5 to 10 years before it becomes AIDS. So do we have a situation like that where this disease in a few years, because now we've seen a progression from normal COVID, long COVID, what if that keeps going? And that's one of the most dangerous things about this illness, I think. Maybe all of us who have COVID are destined for long COVID.
That's an interesting take.
I have personal and professional experience with all of this. When I was still working in the hospitals, I was seeing.
So you actually know what you're talking about, unlike us.
Well, I wouldn't consider myself an expert, just saw it. Even last year, I saw a lot of people coming in with myocarditis, inflammation of the heart, which was a factor due to not being vaccinated and getting COVID, which we've heard, is a side effect of COVID. And I would see a lot of people who had COVID multiple times and unfortunately passed away because the last time they got COVID without getting vaccinated really did them in. Just did like multi-organ shutdown. It just really depended on what they were there for. But I saw a lot of patients in the ICU with COVID-related illnesses that really took a toll on their bodies. And if I didn't believe it then, I have a personal story too, actually in January of 2020. So if you remember our timelines, even though we'd all love to forget 2020, we didn't really get COVID here per se until March of 2020.
I know people with COVID that had COVID in December, at Christmas that year. So Christmas 2019 Christmas.
Right. So I remember this because my birthday is January 4th. And I remember I was having friends over. My husband actually cooked my girlfriends and I dinner for my birthday. And I couldn't eat it. I was feverish. I felt so sick. At that time, I was able to still breathe, but I didn't know what was going on. I was really nauseous. And mind you, right before this, I had been working at a skilled nursing facility. And I always get vaccinated for the flu and pneumonia because also the flu and pneumonia were going around at that time. It's a skilled nursing facility, congregate living. So, there's going to be bugs no matter what. I'm convinced I picked up some sort of bug because this was, so that was January 4th. January 7th, I was in the emergency room. I could not breathe. My oxygen level was at 79%. which for a normal human being, without any like asthma or COPD or anything, you normally breathe at an oxygen rate of 90% to 100%. Sometimes 92%. Again, you would have to ask a doctor, as I'm not a doctor, but from my days as a nursing assistant, I know that that's what was normal. My heart rate was through the roof. It was in the 150s. A normal heart rate for an adult is 60 to 90 beats per minute, and mine was in the 130s to 150s.
I get that.
They had to put me on 5 liters of oxygen. I have never required oxygen in my life before. And even on 5 liters of oxygen, it still took a while for my oxygen levels to kind of normalize. I was so sick, head to toe, shivering, fevers. I think my fever was like 102, 103, which is scary because I have an autoimmune issue that's called it's an autoinflammatory issue called familial Mediterranean fever, which I get very high fevers if I'm not on the medication I'm on, colchicine. Normally I'll get fevers of like 104.6. So with this, so they're testing me, right? Everything's coming back negative. Then they did a chest x-ray and they saw all this inflammation. This was also when I first learned I had arthritis in my back, because they're like, by the way, you have a degenerative thoracic spine, which for people who don't know where that is, that's kind of like the area between like your shoulder blades. And oh yeah, we also see some herniated discs in your neck, and we see some in your lower back. And yeah, there's just a lot of inflammation, and my rib cage was killing me. Oh, by the way, you have costochondritis, which is inflammation of the rib cage.
So everything you want to hear in a doctor's office, basically.
Right. Well, this was in the hospital. I was still on oxygen and I had to be hospitalized for 6 days. This is also when I found out I had psoriatic arthritis. I had sinus tachycardia. I had what happened?
So that sounds like a bad day for you.
Well, yeah, and they had tested me for COVID. They didn't test me for COVID-19. To this day, because this is when all my issues started popping up, I'm convinced I had a form of COVID, because it took me about a year and I had to resign from my job then as a social worker in a skilled nursing facility. Especially that's when COVID was rampant too. So it was just not wise for me to go back into a facility when I was fighting whatever I was fighting. But it took a year for me to finally, lung-wise, to finally feel back somewhat normal. But in the meantime, all of these other issues popped up. And I don't know if it just highlighted all these issues that I had, and or due to the trauma of being so sick, it made these pop up. Like, it depends who you ask. And of course, my doctors can't confirm that. But I do really believe long COVID is a real and legit thing. Again, I've seen it in other patients in the hospitals. Sometimes they do bounce back from it, and sometimes they don't. And also it depends if they've been vaccinated or not. That always plays a factor too. But also within the autoimmune community, I have asked a lot of people who also, you look at their bio and it says long COVID survivor. So these high numbers do not surprise me. I think what we tend to do in society is, oh, that was yesterday's news. But for me, I feel long COVID never went away. Maybe more people are reporting it now. I don't know. But also, it's something that's still out there and we don't quite understand, because we don't even know what the long-term effects of COVID are to this day. And we also don't know what the long-term effects of the vaccinations are, and people will get vaccinated and sometimes it still doesn't help. So it's just like, your numbers don't surprise me. Who put that study out, by the way?
So that study was by... this is based on surveys from the Census Bureau.
Oh, okay. So again, another legit source.
And then for the wastewater, it was the state of North Carolina's their respiratory virus surveillance.
Oh.
Okay. So again, legitimate sources. To
Oh,
this
yeah.
day, obviously, I'm still dealing with all those things. My lung functions are back to normal. I've always had asthma, so they weren't quite ever normal, if you will, but I have to see a pulmonologist. I go to my allergist. I mean, and obviously I have a rheumatologist for all my other issues. I have to see a cardiologist now, which I had never had a heart issue in my life, even when I was at my heaviest weight of 266 pounds. I mean, so whatever this lung virus, because that's all they could say is that it was some lung infection, because my chest lit up like a Christmas tree, but they just couldn't figure out what like caused it. And the only other kicker was none of the staff that were caring for me, none of my family, my friends, anybody who came to visit me, my husband, nobody got whatever virus I had, but I'm convinced to this day it was some form of COVID, because why would it unleash all of these issues that I still deal with?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
today,
they could have just been healthy and been unsymptomatic, you know?
What happened?
They could have just been healthy and unsymptomatic. That was something that we saw with COVID a lot, that people were carriers, but they weren't showing any symptoms because they were healthy bodies.
True. And not to like, I mean, not to say like, oh, I'm so popular, but I had a lot of people visit me. I mean, I want to say at least like 20, 30 people visit me while I was in the hospital, and none of them got sick.
Popular.
I'm not trying to say I'm popular, but
popular.
But none of them got sick, and all of them were, you know, different ages, had their own autoimmune issues or didn't, and then some of them brought their kids. I mean, so
blow a hole
I don't
in
know.
my hypothesis.
What happened?
What?
Just blow a hole in my hypotheses, I guess.
Oh, I'm just saying this was my personal account.
No, yeah.
But yeah, I think again, like there, like you guys were saying, there are those outliers for people who just like self-report and like don't, you know.
I mean, I didn't know that much about it. You're saying you like saw that shit, so that makes more sense.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you would normally see COVID, and then they're there for myocarditis, or they are in heart failure, or they need a lung transplant, or now, mind you, this is also not taking into consideration any other comorbidities they might have had, you know, but COVID definitely complicated all of that stuff. So like for me, I already had asthma, and then all of a sudden I can't breathe on my own. Like they almost were going to like discharge me with home oxygen, and I said no, this is not my new normal. We gotta figure this out. I'm not going home just knowing it was some lung infection, and this is why I'm going to be on continuous oxygen for the rest of my life. You know, it didn't make sense to me. So thankfully I was able to breathe on my own, but you know, that's not always the case for other people, unfortunately. But
I know we always hate to say, you know, that someone's too young for something when it comes to chronic illness, but yeah, no, having a whole oxygen machine, you're too young for that. Hopefully, you know what I mean? Because that's a bit much. Like we don't want that one.
I'm not seeing the fault in my stars, God.
Right. Oh.
Not yet. We're not at that point. That's like.
Oh my God. Okay.
I forgot that movie. Damn.
And I bawled my eyes out. Like,
oh yeah, I cried my eyes out.
Oh goodness, yeah.
I watched like 4 sad movies on that plane, and I was sitting next to some man, and he was probably like, "What is wrong with this bitch?"
Like, what the hell?
Why is she watching all this depressing shit? Yeah.
I was very dumb because I think I was a teenager when it came out. I thought, oh, they're gonna make it. They're gonna survive somehow, right? Like, nope.
Just like a Walk to Remember, all the chick flicks and The Notebook, all that stuff. Yeah. Well, we've definitely. Is it time to wrap up now, Emmanuel? Because you're my host today, so.
Yep.
Oh, it is? Okay.
You're the host. You've always been the host.
Okay, that's debatable today, but that's okay.
She's sassy today.
Anyways, Nicole, it has been so amazing having you on as a guest, and I know we're going to have you on in future episodes just to hear more about your story, but also as the Autoimmune Alliance, comes to fruition, and you and I will be working on that hand in hand a lot too. So we will definitely be able to also pick your brain with educational discrepancies and accommodations for students with, disabilities, but also with autoimmune issues. So I can't wait to dive into that with you in the future. And, again, it just feels like we were hanging out here and, had my brother and sister here that I was talking to. Aww. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and and for our listeners. Oh, before I go, Nicole has a podcast too that you guys should listen to about education, and I'll let you talk about that really quickly and drop your Instagram handle and your Spotify and all that. So go ahead.
All right. Well, I also have a podcast called Acknowledge Knowledge. We're an educational podcast that uses peer education to talk about and teach about a wide range of topics that we think the world should know more about. So far, we've got episodes out about neurodivergence, ADHD, autism, sex, gender, sexuality, and we'll have a lot more coming out too, focusing on just different things that people should know more about. So check us out. We're called Acknowledge Knowledge. We have a website called acknowledgeknowledge.com. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, and TikTok. So check us out.
Cool. Yeah. So make sure to do that. And for our podcast, Chronic Convos, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube, and also TikTok. And this has been a lot of fun, guys. So thank you so much. And again, I'm your host. I guess I was your host today, Ashley, joined with Emmanuel and Nicole. And also, please give our organization, WAAA, on Instagram a follow as well. And give us feedback on this podcast as well as other stuff you'd love to hear us talk about in the future. And we can't wait to talk with you guys next time. All right, I'll talk to you later.
If you can.
What was that?
I said, and donate if you can.
Oh yeah, donate if you can.
Donate, please.
Yes, please donate so we can continue to do this. Exactly, that little fundraiser in you, Nicole. Okay. But anyways, guys, have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
There we got sound effects now. Let's go. Okay. All right. That's really annoying. All right. See ya.